Hello everyone, day 26. We read from 1 Kings 22 to 2 Kings 9. So we start to come to the end, the climax of Elijah's earthly ministry. So we see him call Elisha and we see them go on this journey from Gilgal to Bethel, from Bethel to Jericho, from Jericho finally to Jordan. Through this journey, Elijah is telling Elisha, you need to go back. And Elisha is like, no, anywhere you go, I'm going with you. So he asks Elisha, what do you want from me? Or what, as I'm going? I mean, everybody already knows is going on this particular. Do you know that everyone is telling Elisha, do you know that your master is going to be taken away and all that? And he's like, I know. And Elijah asked Elisha, what can I do for you? What do you want? And Elisha asks for a double portion of the anointing that Elijah carries. Elijah is like, that's quite a difficult thing for you to ask. Well, you know what? If you see me the moment I am taken up, then you would have it and all that. And he says that as they are going on the road, a chariot of fire comes between both of them and separates them, and that Elijah is taken up on a whirlwind, which is interesting because many times when I hear people say this story, they always say that Elijah was taken up in a chariot of fire. He wasn't taken up in a chariot of fire. It was taken up by a whirlwind, but a chariot separated them. And maybe it is what Elisha shouted as was being taken up that confuses people. Elisha would shout. It was like, my father. What did he say? Yes, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. He described one man as that, recognizing Elijah as a defense of Israel. Do you see? And then it says that Elijah's mantle fell and Elisha picked it up. Something I noticed as I continued to read further was I started to notice parallels between the miracles that Elijah did and Elisha also did. So we see that Elijah had to deal with a widow whose jar never ran dry. Do you see? Elisha did the same because there was a widow who came to him that she needed to pay off debts. The debtor wanted to take her sons, and he asked her to gather jars to pour oil, and that the oil never ran dry. And I was like, interesting. We also see that for Elijah, the widow's son died. So after a while, when Elijah was with that widow, the son died. Elijah rose him up by laying flat on him. Do you see? That thing also happens with Elisha. And I'm like, I'm seeing some parallels here. Do you see? And also in the splitting of the Jordan miraculously, Elijah did that. And also Elisha also did that after he had just received the mantle of Elisha. And we can see that in both of them's story, or in Elisha's story, there's almost like a divine continuation of the pattern, showing that it was the same pattern, but almost with greater power. And I love that. One of the stories I loved the most in this chapter was the interaction with the Shunammite woman. So the Shunammite woman was described as a wealthy woman who, anytime Elisha was passing through, he would stop by at their home and eat. So, of course, he could only do that because they had welcomed him. So, anytime he was passing through, he would stop there. She would entertain him. She would give him food. And then it occurred to her, this man travels a lot. He passes by here every time. She told her husband, you know what? Why don't we prepare a room at the upper part of our house for him? Instead of him just passing by and eating, he can rest there. So they prepared a beautiful room for him. They had a table, had lamp, had a bed, and she discerned, and I love that, she discerned what should I call it now? She discerned the grace of God on the life of Elisha, and she wasn't asking for anything. Do you see? And she was very generous, and I love that. And I think because of the goodness of what she had been doing and how Elisha was just mind blown. And he asked, I called her one of the days, I was like, what do you want? What can I do for you? How do you want me to bless you? He says that Elisha sent for her. She stood by the door to his room that was in our house. And he said, what can she's like, nothing, no, I'm good and all that. But it was Gehazi, Elisha's servant, who now told Elisha that She doesn't have a son. And then Elisha called her and said, you would have a son. She's like, please, sir, don't joke with me. Not all. And like, you would have a son. And indeed, she had a son. And somewhere along the line, she had had a son. The son was growing. The son died. The son was burning up. The son was with the father. And he said that the boy wasn't feeling very well. The son sends a servant to take the boy to the mother, the Shunammite woman. And a short while after the son was with her, the son died. Now, the Shunammite woman sends a message to her husband saying that, tell him to prepare us for me. I need to go and see the prophet. And the husband was like, today is not a day to see prophet. Why are you going? She's like, don't worry. I just need to go and see the prophet. She did not tell her husband that their son had died. You know what that means? You know the equivalent of what that is? Your husband is in the house or somewhere, I don't know, maybe in his garden, whatever it is that's going on. The child is sick. They are both aware that the child is sick. The child dies. The wife doesn't scream. She's not hysteric that my son has died. She sends a message. She goes to her husband and says, please give me the car keys. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to church. I want to go and see the pastor. And he's like, but today is not Sunday. And she's like, don't worry. I just need to see him. The son is lying dead in the room. This woman runs to Elijah. Elisha tells him, you need to come with me and all that. And she was just like, I did not ask you for a son. I did not beg you for a son. And Elisha, discerning what had happened, sends Gehazi, I think with this, I can't remember what he gave Gehazi. Oh yeah, start running to the woman's house and all that. Gehazi gets there and he tried all what he could do that he told him to try, nothing worked. But the woman didn't even go with Gehazi. Told Elisha, I am not leaving you unless you go with me. Elisha eventually goes with her, gets to the house, locks himself up in the room with the boy, prays to God, stretches himself. Remember I had said that Elijah did a similar miracle, stretches him beside by the boy, stretching himself 3 times. Was it 3 times or 7 now? Also, and then eventually the boy woke up, and it was just a beautiful test. I love that story. Now we'll go to the story of Naaman. Naaman was a general or a commander in the Aramean army. He was powerful, but he had leprosy. Do you see? And then one of his servants told his wife that, see, there's a prophet somewhere. He's a man of God. He can heal, I believe that he can heal your husband's leprosy. And the woman, it's a good thing when, I love to see it when there are people of influence who can still take counsel from people who may be considered lowly, because you never know where your testimony, your blessings come from. So, of course, the servant girl tells the mistress, and her mistress tells her husband. So Naaman, of course, takes permission, and then he goes to seek out from the king, and he goes to seek out Elisha for his miracle. But here's the thing, it teaches a very good thing, that many times, many people do not know or understand that just because a problem is complicated doesn't mean that the solution has to be. So Naaman gets there, and then Elisha tells him, go dip yourself in the Jordan 7 times, or go wash yourself in the Jordan 7 times. Naaman is livid. What effrontery. I even thought he would come out and wave his hands, call to the sky or whatever. He was expecting something elaborate. And all they are telling him is to go dip himself in the Jordan. And I remember he's saying that there are not many clean rivers before he got here. Why would they tell him to go and dip himself in the Jordan? And he was counseled. Oh God, it's because you don't know. Just do it. What do you have to lose? Honestly, what do you have to lose? You don't have anything to lose. And then he did, and he came out. He said his body was as fresh as that of a baby, of a newborn baby. Complicated problems do not always have complicated solutions. It's in the simple things. And when it comes to God, God always simplifies it. And I love that, because it shows us and cautions us that many times, if we're not careful, we may miss our miracles and our testimony, because we try to overcomplicate things and try to overcomplicate the way we think that God should show up in that situation. And I love that. And then we see Jehu's anointing, the anointing of Jehu, which was very funny. Elisha sent one of the prophets to a military commander called Jehu to go anoint him as king, and so that he would be able to enact God's judgment and execution on the family of Ahab. And the instruction was, when he gets there, call him separately into a private room, have him kneel, anoint his head, and as you finish anointing his head, pack your robes between your legs and run for your life. Once you anoint him, I have anointed you, God has appointed you as king. Put your slippers, hold it in your hand, carry and run. And I remember just laughing. It must have been comical. So the prophet did that, and immediately did that. They said he ran, like he ran, because it was a dangerous situation. If Ahab should hear, or the word should spread that somebody had come to anoint another king while Ahab was still alive, must have been terrible. And that is all that I read. And my key insight is that impartation requires continuity, not limitation. And this just shows the dynamic between Elijah and Elisha. His imparting his anointing on Elisha was not just for any honest, it was for continuity. And that is the way God works. When we are imparted with an anointing, with a ministry, it's because God requires that that level of anointing, that stream continues. God doesn't impart for impartation's sake. It is usually a continuation. There is nothing new under the sun. There's also a spiritual dimension to it, which means there's nobody who can claim that they have an impartation or an anointing that has never been heard of. So we'd always hear of someone is being imparted with the mantle of Elisha, you always hear a name, Deborah, hear those kind of things. Yes, it is a continuation. Do you see? True succession in God's kingdom builds upon existing faithfulness. Number two, simple obedience unlocks profound miracles. Naaman's story reminds us that God's ways sometimes may appear simple, but we must be able to put our pride aside so that we don't miss the things that God plans to do or is doing in our life. We should not always think of overcomplicating things. It is not God's will to overcomplicate things, and so that we think this God is a mighty God. This thing was so hard. No, it's really in the simple things. And number three, generosity invites divine encounters. And I love that because many people have gotten their blessings, their testimonies, things there have been long-standing issues for them simply because they were generous. The Shunammite woman, when she thought of housing a prophet, when she thought of feeding a prophet, when she thought of let's make life easy for a prophet, never in her wildest dream thought that that particular act of generosity would lead to her having a son. She was just doing it because she could afford it. But in the end, God honored it. So generosity always, many times, always, I would like to say, generosity always invites divine encounters. And that are all the insight I have for day 26. Have a wonderful day.